Hey everybody, thanks Jaewon for the introduction, and super nice to meet you folks here back in Korea. I was here before the pandemic, I think in 2019, so yeah, there was something in between that didn't allow us to come, but I'm super happy to be again with the Korean community. And this is my session today. I will be talking about designing for foldables and things that you can expect in 2023. This is shortly about me. My name is Enrique. I'm originally from Spain. I'm mostly based between Germany and Vietnam. I spend most of my time doing Kotlin, a bit of iOS, a bit of KMP, and a bit of backend. I run the Kotlin Weekly. If you don't know, it is a mailing list that it's sent on Sunday and summarizes a little bit the Kotlin world and brings all the news about KMP, Ktor, Compose, you name it. And this is my Twitter account if you want to follow me. Then, what are foldables? What are they bringing new? Is this a new idea? How many people here have been working with foldables? Can you raise your hand? Okay. Yeah, more than I was expecting, actually. Well, it's not a new thing. Foldables or larger screens have been with us for some time right now. You know that well. Android suffers this problem of fragmentation, right? In iOS, we have a few devices that we need to cover, typically iPhone, iPad, maybe like an iPhone that has a lower resolution. Android starts increasing this a little bit. We have, according to the Google Play Store, they give some statistics, and the last one said something like 15,000 plus devices registered, with all of them different resolutions. And Chrome or web browsers, of course, by their nature, they have all the potential configurations. So now we also had, of course, Chromecast and those Chrome devices, right, that are running Chrome OS. And the idea is that at some point, the mobile apps belong a little bit to the web realm, and they have also an infinite set of combinations. So Android app could potentially become similar to a web app, and you could have like the similar problems like the ones you're having in a web browser. This is a soccer application from Germany. It's called All Football, and this application is running actually on a Chromecast. So here you can see how, and this is a native Android app, right? So as you are resizing it and changing the size, the screen is changing. You move from 2 columns into 1 column, from 1 column into 3 columns. Sometimes you can have the list view. So this is very similar to what happens when you are resizing a web browser, right? Think as an Android developer, right? The amount of interesting problems that this is bringing, because you need to decide what's going to happen as you keep resizing the application, which screen is going to be displayed, etc. Let's move into the next one. Yeah. And foldables are intended to be a hybrid device category. We have the phones. The phones are very portable. We have the desktops. The desktop allows us to be more productive because we can have a larger screen and better hardware. And the tablets try to be somewhere in between. It's the couch device that you can say. They have more productivity than the phone. You can do more things, but of course they are less portable. You cannot bring them on your pocket. Foldables try to bring this gap between phones and tablets. They are not quite a phone, but they're not quite a tablet. It's not a new idea. They have been here for quite a bit of time. In 2008 already, there was a prototype announced from Nokia called Nokia Morph that, you see that like everything looks a little bit science fiction. They were trying to bring a bracelet that you could put and similar to a watch, get a different type of UI. And we also had things like the Kyocera Echo, which was a device with 2 screens that as you move them, you could be readapting your application to be on both screens. Now, the hardware always needs to find a trade-off between having a flexible display and a hinge. This is what we can see now more or less in the market. We have the Samsung Galaxy foldables, right? They can be folded. They have screens that take a different appearance depending on the status on the device. We have things like the Huawei Mate XS and the Windows Surface Duo, which, if you have been checking the Windows Surface, it's a little bit different because they have this knot in the middle, and the screen is not a continuous one, right? You need to find the separation and take some design decisions. This is currently the foldable market as it is today. Samsung is the biggest player with almost 2/3 of the foldable market. And then we have a few of them. Huawei, Apple, others, Google, you just probably saw, released the Pixel Fold. But mainly we're talking here about Samsung when we're thinking about foldable devices. What's going to come next? Well, the Pixel Fold that just arrived recently. OnePlus also released a new foldable device. And from here, we obviously need to see what happens. You probably saw also this rollable device in a CES event, I think, in 2021, a couple of years ago, that was a prototype that never moved into production. The screen was larger, it could get a little bit compressed, and well, based on this, you would need also to readapt your layout and whatsoever. It's important to remark that many of those devices are prototypes, meaning that a company puts a lot of money in developing this prototype, but never makes it into production, because it's not the same as well. Developing a prototype that doesn't aim to have low cost is more of a proof of concept. When something goes into production, the price needs to go down and benefit from mass production. If you release this thing and it's going to cost like $10,000, not many people is going to buy it, obviously. And maybe we have also some things like the hybrid devices and the multifold. The multifold devices are those that can be folded in different segments. But as of now, everything stays in the prototype realm. Now, this is, I'll point to the source later at the end of the slides. The global foldable market, it's expected to grow 52% year over year in 2023. That's interesting. What they also need to say is that currently foldable devices represent under 1% of all the devices. So if you're growing 50% every year, but you're under 1%, it will take you a lot of years to reach something like 5 or 10%. But anyway, this is something that as developers and well, people running our companies, we need to keep an eye and see what's the market demand and whether this is at some point going to have a significant impact. Yeah, this is more or less the expectation that they have, that at some point this year we will be hitting this 2% of foldable devices. I think we always need to be a little bit skeptic, but well, those are the forecasts for foldable devices. Now, in phones, it's clear the interactions that we can have, and in larger screens, we have different use cases that we also need to consider. So one of them would be reading. The screen can be double, is larger, so it's easy to read. We also can have watch videos and have video calls in a foldable device. This is very clear. The device can be turned into this landscape mode, put into a table, and it's much easier to, well, leave it next to your computer while you're having a call or watching a video or hanging out. We also have mobile gaming, obviously. The screen can get double, so we have the width is going to be the same, but the height can easily double, and we have a wider surface where we can, well, run our canvas and games, and people can play. And of course, multitasking and multi-window modes. I don't know if you have done this. I personally like to have, for example, my email and Twitter. While I'm writing something, then I can scroll Twitter. But there's one use case that is very clear. In a phone, if it's a big phone, you can still do this. But if you have a foldable, you have this wider aspect that allows you to run multi-window. This, of course, is not free. This comes with a set of challenges. Now we need to support different screen states. The folded one, the one that is closer to a device, the flex mode, the one that translates into watching videos or making video calls, and the open or book mode. Now, we need to provide smooth transitions and responsive patterns. What happens when we are changing the configuration of our device? We need to, well, move maybe from a static layout into supporting a list view and a detail view, and this needs to happen with animation and smoothly, so for the user it's a pleasant experience. We also want to support things like drag and drop. When we have a multi-window screen and we want to click on one section and drop it to the next one, so we can reuse things like images, videos, any other component, it's more clear than we need this versus a standard phone. And that comes into UX principles that we need to follow up when dealing with foldables. Does more space mean more content? What do you guys think? Yes, no? Well, mostly yes, but we also need to follow some rules. You've seen this in Windows, right? Is when you have a Windows tablet or a Windows phone, the screen tends to fill and expand, and you have more options in the shape of, well, these clickable components. Here is pleasant to watch, it's beautiful, but if it grows too much, try to find something here, right? Take some time. Where is my video game? Where is my application? You might have here, like, I don't know, 40, 50 different options. So maybe more space does not always mean more content. There is a law called Hicks' law. It has been researched by psychologists that, well, they work in universities and institutions, and they work on those things. The more options that are presented to the user, the more time is going to take to the user to make a decision, and the less satisfaction the user is going to have. There are similar studies, by the way, in restaurants or in shopping malls. If you have a restaurant with 100 options, the user is going to take, well, the guest or the customer is going to take more time to choose this, and is going to be unsatisfied with the final output. If you have a shop and you're offering 30 types of jeans, the user is going to take more time to choose one jean, and is also going to be more unsatisfied. If you check, in fact, the top-notch restaurants, like the Michelin star or the really good ones, they generally have an offer of like 3 menus or one tasting menu or something like that. Nothing like 50 different dishes, because they do this research before. Now we can see here this Sling website. If you check it twice, it's terrible. You have like a first horizontal scroll. You have a second one when you click on the first one. You have a third one when you click on the second one, and then you have some content. Now imagine in this position, you need to go back. You don't know if you need to click on the third one, on the second one, on the first one, or you need to keep scrolling. But Netflix generally does it well. In Netflix, they use a well-known pattern, which is similar that you have in YouTube, where you have the main title or main content, and you're subsequently presenting new more content. And this content doesn't, if the screen is very big, you can try that actually in a really big browser. It does not try to offer you like 10 different rows, even if they have the space. They really scale the screen. So you need to be aware of the cognitive overload. You need to optimize for the user experience. You need to balance and trade-off somehow the space you have, the content, and the usability. Now, if you go on to the Wikipedia, well, Wikipedia, is this foundation, not profit seekers. Guess they didn't run always all the user tests that they needed to run, but it's hard to find anything here, right? Like, you don't know if, should you jump to the second paragraph, third one, where are the links? Whereas, funnily, the mobile version is much better. They really try to follow this pattern of not having more than a number of characters per line. In the same studies that the Hicks law come to light, they generally analyze and they say something like, the ideal line should not have more than 60, 70 characters of width, because that's the moment where the mind stops paying attention, and again, the dissatisfaction of the customer or user grows. Medium is a nice example. In Medium, they also follow, which we will see later, another pattern where the content stays on the left, having more or less 2/3 of the screen. Then you have a sort of navigation or a summary on the right side, and this includes 1/3 of the screen, broadly. But you can see that here is more pleasant. You know that you should be scrolling on one side or on the other one, or clicking on the top menu. It's not an overload, a cognitive overload of content. You need to keep control of your width. The ideal line length, it should be 40 to 70 characters. Now, we have a few patterns that we would need to follow. I will go through some of them. We have a reveal pattern, and it works like this. When we have imagine we have a screen. On the left side, it would be the phone, our mobile device, and on the right side, the unfolded or the large screen. And in this case, we want to reveal our content starting at the position that we have on the left side. So we could do something like this. On the left side, you see that we have, this is the same application that I displayed at the beginning, by the way. We would have a list of, well, game, soccer results on the left, We have team that has played, the result, and then we have at the top a navigation where we can click and display more things. See that when we reveal it, the screen increases size, and we can see the match day on the left and the result of the teams on the right side as a grid view. So we are still respecting the content, not overloading the user, and providing more information. We can also transform. Transform means that when we are moving from something like a list view into a pattern similar to a grid view where, well, the content gets presented better. Think of something like this. We will have our list, items programmatically set horizontally, and of course, on the grid, we don't need to do the same because we have enough width. So we could think of a grid of 3 items where, well, things are more visible at once. We can also divide. In this case, think of a similar pattern with a list view. How can we divide this on a screen to make use of a foldable or large screen? So see, in this case, we would have a more complex view or a recycler view or a compose list that includes things like a thumbnail and a title. We could, well, expand more the content on the right side, whereas we keep the list on the left side. So we could keep scrolling when we're interested in one of the items, click, and this expands its information on the right side. We can reflow, change the flow of the app. Sometimes we have a list also of large items, and we would like to change the flow on how we click on them and how they get displayed. So in this specific case from here, see that the left example contains, well, an overview panel, and then we have on the horizontal view things like tickets or lineup or anything where we need to click individually on the device, on the mobile phone. That makes sense, but on a foldable, we could just display at once and change the flow of them. So if we click on the overview of one of the games, then we will be changing the flow of how the live ticker gets generated and the lineup and everything. We can obviously expand our content. Think of having a single item, large, and suddenly our screen is bigger. We could benefit and increasing the size of our screen, and well, in this example, we only have things like points and goals and anything, but imagine a list with more items. We could easily display them at once and benefit from a larger space. Reposition them. In the case where we have an item that is taking a specific location in the screen, in a larger one, it might be better to put it in a different place. Think here of this one. We have the on the left side, again, the list of items that happened today, the games that happened today in the German soccer league. And on the screen from the phone at the bottom, we have this C table, which is just at the bottom of each component. In a larger screen, we could change the position, reposition it, and add it to the right side of the same component. So that makes more sense. The screen now is less cluttered, and things are more visible. Now, Google provides us with something called canonical layouts and are patterns that we need to follow on the screen. I'm sure some of them are going to be familiar for you. But first, how are windows divided in foldables and large devices? Well, a device can be compact, and this happens when the width is less than 600 pixels, so typical phone in a portrait mode. A medium device will be between 600 and 840, so a table in portrait mode or a foldable that is also unfolded, and everything else is considered to be expanded when the width is over 840. You're probably familiar with this, right? Because with this you can define different resources and load dynamically into the app the things that you need. Now, we have 3 different canonical layouts. One of them is the feed, typical social network where you scroll and you can display more content. Another one will be the supporting panel where you have, typically like in YouTube, a main, something called hero at the top, the thing that tries to grab your attention, and then you can have things like related videos, related content, or comments. And of course, the list detail. When you have a list, click, and then expands into detail. This is the Zeppelin app. You can actually download it from the Google Play Store, and well, includes a few of those patterns already implemented. You've probably worked with Zeppelin, right? Similar to, well, I think now Figma is more popular. But you have things like the feed, right? So in this case, you would have all your projects, and well, when you start expand your screen, see that the application will be well expanded and moving from this list into the grid view, and then moving the panel to the left. So you can benefit from having a more visible menu and more content on a reasonable way on the screen. Let me move to the next one. Exactly, the supporting panel. So, seeing this example from here, you have a specific screen, and where you expand the content, you will keep, you will move the nodes from a screen in Figma into the right side, and on the left side, you can load things like, well, your account or information about the specific project without, well, having to click into any menu, both of them visible at the same time. List detail, that's probably one of the most famous ones. In something like a profile or settings, we have a list of items that we can explore. And well, if suddenly we have more space, we would not need to abandon the profile or the settings screen. We just load them on the right side while we move our menu into the left side. So here is obviously more visible than, well, in this case, does not make sense to expand the content to fill all the screen. Next one. Yeah, show me the code. So let's gonna check a little bit of code on how to do this. Well, if we want to have a top-level navigation bar, we would be, and by the way, I know that's gonna be a comment. There is not a lot of support of Compose for this. So there is some, not a lot, so you would need to be using the bridge. I decided to do this. I know not everybody will be happy, but yeah, if you want to add support for composables as of it is now, the support for Compose is not 100% guaranteed. You can still apply it. You know, in Compose, you have this bridge, I don't remember exactly the name, that allows you to call elements that are written in XML. But well, you will need to balance and see whether it makes sense to go full into the bridge, or that's always a decision that is depending on your project a little bit. But anyway, yeah, for this top-level navigation, we could use the button navigation view. So we will need to go to, well, in our, we'll see later how the layout changed, but something like in your resource folder /layout/activity. The top-level navigation, this one that you can see on the left side right when the item is expanding, it would be the navigation rail view. That's the name that it has. See how here the layout is changing, and instead of being just layout/activity, we are adding the suffix -w 600 dp. That's to specify that this activity will be instantiated when our device has this configuration. So typically we will have like 3 activities in our 3 activity XML files, each of them in their folder, and this will be automatically instantiated. Now we have the top-level navigation, right? The one like when we expand our menu and it's sort of a more visible list. That will be the navigation view. Again, see how in this case we have the layout -w 840 dp, and that's how the activity gets instantiated. So that's how we tell our phone to use one layout or the other one. Now, an interesting question here is about the navigation graph. Do we need to change the navigation when we're dealing with foldables? Do we need to do anything else? Well, the idea is always to keep the same. If we're changing the navigation, that can be, imagine how complex it can get, right? So, or imagine if you're on a website and the navigation starts changing depending on the size of the browser. That's something that you don't want to do. So the navigation graph should be single and unique to the app, not based on the configuration. So if we want to have something like the list detail, we could be using this sliding pane layout that will be contained in a fragment container view on the left, another one on the right. See that we're specifying different widths and different weights. And this is how it gets implemented. So the list screen will take 300 dp, the content will take 400 dp, plus the calculation of the weight. In this case, we have 1 and 1, so each of them is going to take half, but you could play and say 2 and 3 or 2 and 4, depends a little bit on how you want the screen to look like. So this would be, well, when the device gets unfolded, and, well, pretty much it's going to look approximately half and a half. You can, when you need to open the details, you can be using this function from here. If you're using the fragment manager, you will, well, if the sliding pane layout is open, this is an attribute that you can call from the layout. You just set the transition and call the open function, and the opens the content screen. And yeah, if you're using the navigation controller in Android, you will use something similar. Yeah, you will need to check if the sliding pane layout is open. If it's open, you just enter the animation that you want to do, like, well, like hiding one element or whatever you want, and then calling again the open function. And yeah, to handle the back button, we have a few methods that we will need to override. So pretty much this sliding pane layout and the side listener. And this will help us to, if the pane is open and we click back, then we should close it. If the pane is already closed and is back, then maybe we close the entire app or we navigate to another one, however we want to do it. We have a linear layout manager that can implement a screen like this one from here, where we have a sort of a grid with a couple of items in a feed screen. And for larger ones, we could be using the grid layout manager or the stagger grid layout manager or the flexbox layout manager. All of them provide us more or less a grid-like functionality to have the items, well, distributed in a grid or a box where we can put a number of our elements. The supporting panel, this is the structure that YouTube or those websites are following. See that at the bottom, at the top, we have the hero, and then comments or description and related videos. So this is easy to implement. We could have a layout at the top called hero, where we specify the dimension ratio that we want, 16:9 or 4:3. The description and the up next are two layouts that are going to be right under the hero, and we could play with things like specifying the width percentage, and this would be right under the hero and to the left or to the right, and well, with something as simple as this, you can achieve this panel from here. Constraint sets. It could be interesting for us to identify the constraint set of the device, meaning if the device is closed or folded or fully open, and that's something that is, well, fairly simple to do. Of course, based on this, then we can identify if we have a book that is open, we want to, well, display both the first and the second page, or we want to display the index on the left side. That depends on, well, what you want to do. In order to detect the folding features, we would need to implement this library from here. Window, AndroidX.window is currently on 1.0.0. And yeah, so if we would be using coroutine, for example, we could call this window info tracker. We call the function window layout info, and then we collect it. And at the moment we collect it, we will be able to get all the folding features that our device is currently presenting. Yeah, so this is how we would typically call it in a composable. We could have a launch effect. We will call the window layout info, collect, and bring everything into our application. Folding features allows us to find if the device is in book mode by, well, checking the state and the orientation. The same for the tabletop mode. We can check the state and the orientation and decide whether the device is on one side or the other. And of course, how can we test it? Do we want to buy a Google Fold and a Samsung Fold and then a rollable device? It can get a bit expensive, right? Well, luckily, we can have support for all this on the emulator. If you go to your Android Studio and open your Android device manager, you can see that, well, on the phone section, on the phone category, you can have folding devices, rollable devices, the one that unrolls and that doesn't exist yet, or, well, it's just on a prototype stage. But you can actually create a prototype or a virtual machine that has the features for these sort of devices. You can also make use of virtual sensors to fold it, to rotate it, or to move, and see more or less how your application would behave. And also, a tool that is integrated in Android Studio is the layout validation. If you open any layout, you can go to reference device and click on or activate this reference device section, and then suddenly you will have a preview of how this is going to look on foldables, on tablets, and on desktop. So if you would like to see if your application can be easily adapted to support different devices, well, at least you can get this grasp. This obviously requires work and some fine-tuning, but from here, at least you can get an idea of, well, this looks good, or, you know, this is a catastrophe and I need to completely rework it. But I think it's a very good starting point. Now, well, if we want to locate the fault, there is a, I just see there is a small problem here. I'll share the slides later so you can download the code. This could be interesting sometimes to decide whether we want to draw something, or if we see that the fold is going to be in the middle, we want to move things a little bit to the left or to the right, but we can make use of this function from here to know where the windows are intersecting and where this fold is happening in the screen, and then based on this change or readapt our screen. Don't worry too much about the code. I'll post the slides on Twitter. I'll give them to the organizers. I think if you have a Facebook group, so I'll post it there as well, and you can check it. There are a few links here that I think are useful. The first one is, learning about foldables. This is the official guide from Google that tells what I have been telling you today, more expanded with more samples, and tell you how foldables are working and some of the patterns and guides that you should be following. The second one is the material design website. It's very useful because they come up with a lot of do's and don'ts. So if you anytime have any doubt or question about how a material component needs to be used, you can come here, you can search the component, and you're going to get a very thorough detailed guide of things that you are supposed to be doing with this specific component. This is the research that I pointed in the beginning from Counterpoint Research. They actually have more data about foldables. I think it's an interesting read. And the link at the bottom is the code lab from Window Manager. Includes a lot of things that you can do with dual screens. I think it takes like 2-3 hours to finish, and in general, if you're interested, brings, I think, a lot of ideas that, you can apply to work with foldables and not. That's been everything. Thank you so much. This is my Twitter account, if you want to follow. I actually appreciate a lot of feedback from people, so if you could scan the QR code and leave me some feedback. I actually wanted to order a few copies of one book I wrote some time ago, Living by the Code, but it was not going to arrive on time. So what I will do instead is, if you leave me some feedback with your email, I will send you a PDF copy of the book. So it's not the same as a physical one, but hopefully you can learn something new with it. That has been everything. Thanks for being a fantastic public, and I believe I'm going to be at the office hours right after this session, so if you have any question, feel free to find me there or reach out anytime. I'll be here at the venue until 6 o'clock or something like that. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming.